Captain Kyuncho opened his eyes to complete darkness. His head felt like someone had hit it with a hammer. The taste of blood filled his mouth and his body ached all over. He tried to move but found his hands bound behind his back with something that felt like metal wire. Where was he? The last thing he remembered was his patrol ship near the Proxima system. They had been checking trade routes when the sensors went crazy. Enemy ships had appeared from nowhere. His crew had fought hard, but there were too many of them. Now he was somewhere else entirely. The air smelled wrong. It was thick and humid with a strange sweet smell that made his stomach turn. The floor beneath him was cold metal with a rough texture. He could hear sounds around him, but they were not human sounds. Kung Ho forced himself to sit up. His vision slowly adjusted to the dim light. He was in a small cage made of thick metal bars. The cage was barely big enough for him to stand up in. Around him were dozens of other cages arranged in long rows. In the cages nearby were creatures he had never seen before. One looked like a giant lizard with 6 arms. Another was covered in thick fur and had eyes that glowed yellow in the dark. A third creature was tall and thin with skin that seemed to change colors. All of them looked as miserable as he felt. "You are awake," said a voice from the cage next to his. Kyunho turned and saw a human woman sitting against the bars. She was about his age with short black hair and intelligent eyes. Her clothes were torn and dirty, but she sat straight and alert. "Who are you?" Kyunho asked. "My name is Hannah," she replied. "I am a scientist. I study alien life forms. Or I used to before they captured me." "Where are we?" "On a slave ship belonging to the Valians. They are the ones who captured us. Are being taken to their fighting pits." Kung Ho felt his blood run cold. He had heard stories about alien fighting pits, places where different species were forced to fight each other to the death, while crowds watched and bet on the outcome. "How long have I been unconscious?" he asked. 2 days. "Thought you might not wake up. They hit you pretty hard when they brought you in." Hannah moved closer to the bars between their cages. "Listen to me carefully. I have been watching our captors and the other prisoners. I need to tell you what I have learned if we want to survive this." Kyung-ho nodded and moved closer to listen. "The Valians are reptile-like creatures. They are about 7 feet tall with green scales and sharp claws. They make money by capturing different species and forcing them to fight in arenas across the galaxy. The stronger and more dangerous the fighter, the more money they make." "What about humans?" Kung-ho asked. Hannah looked sad. "Humans are considered weak by galactic standards. We are smaller than most species, and we do not have natural weapons like claws or venom. Most humans who end up in the pits are killed quickly. They use us as easy kills to warm up the real fighters." This was not what Kung-ho wanted to hear. "So what chance do we have?" "More than you might think," Hannah said with a small smile. "I've been studying the other species in these cages. Each one has strengths, but also weaknesses. The Valians only care about size and obvious weapons. They do not understand what makes humans truly dangerous." "What do you mean? Think about it. How did humans become the dominant species on Earth? We were not the biggest or strongest, did not have the sharpest teeth or fastest speed, but we had something else. We could think, we could adapt, we could work together. We could use tools and plan ahead." Kung-ho began to understand. "You think we can use our intelligence to survive?" "I know we can. I've been watching the other prisoners. That big lizard creature over there is incredibly strong, but it is also stupid. It only knows how to attack directly. The furry one with the glowing eyes can see in the dark, but it panics when there is too much light. The color-changing one is fast, but it has thin skin that cuts easily. You want us to work together?" "Yes. If we can stay alive long enough, I can teach you how to fight these creatures. I can tell you their weak points and how to beat them. But you have to trust me and do exactly what I say." Kyung-ho looked at this woman who seemed so calm despite their terrible situation. "What is your background? How do you know so much about alien species?" "I was part of a research team studying new life forms on the edge of human space. We were looking for planets that might support human colonies. Our ship was attacked while we were collecting samples. I was the only survivor. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Be ready to fight. The Valians will test us soon. They like to see how new prisoners react to combat. They will probably put us against some of the weaker creatures. First, as if her words had summoned them, heavy footsteps echoed through the holding area. 3 Valian guards appeared at the end of the row of cages. They were even more frightening than Hannah had described. Their scales were dark green and seemed to shine with their own light. Their eyes were yellow and cold. Each one carried a weapon that looked like a combination of a spear and an electric rod. The guards stopped at different cages and used their weapons to force prisoners out. Kyung-ho watched as they took the big lizard creature and 2 others. The prisoners did not resist. They seemed to know that fighting the guards was useless. "Where are they taking them?" Kyung-ho whispered. "To the practice arena. They will fight each other while the guards watch and take notes. The ones who survive will be sent to the main fighting pits. The ones who lose will be fed to the winners." The guards moved down the row, getting closer to their cages. Kyung-ho felt his heart beating faster. His military training told him to stay calm and look for opportunities, but this was unlike any enemy he had ever faced. "Remember what I told you," Hannah said quietly. "Use your brain, not just your strength. Watch for weaknesses. Stay alive long enough for me to help you." The guards reached their cages. One of them pointed at Kyung-ho and said something in a language that sounded like growling mixed with clicking. The meaning was clear enough. The cage door opened and the guard gestured for him to come out. Kyung-ho stood up slowly, his muscles stiff from being cramped in the small space. He looked back at Hannah one last time. "I will be watching," she promised. "I will find a way to help you." As the guards led him away, Kyung-ho tried to remember everything Hannah had told him. He was walking toward what might be his death, but for the first time since waking up, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe humans were not as helpless as everyone thought. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy what they were really capable of. The guards pushed Kyung-ho down a long metal corridor. The walls were covered with strange symbols that seemed to glow with a faint blue light. The air was filled with sounds he had never heard before. Cracked roars, screams, and the clash of metal echoed. From somewhere ahead, they passed through several heavy doors until they reached a massive circular room. The floor was covered with sand that had dark stains on it. Kyung-ho did not want to think about what had caused those stains. Around the edge of the room were raised platforms where more Valian guards stood watching. In the center of the room stood the biggest creature Kyung-ho had ever seen. It was at least 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and a body covered in what looked like natural armor. Its face was insect-like, with huge compound eyes and sharp mandibles that clicked together as it moved. This had to be one of the Krillian warriors Hannah had mentioned. The creature looked at Kyung-ho and made a sound that was part hiss and part laugh. It clearly did not see him as a threat. One of the guards pushed Kyung-ho forward and said something. In the alien language, the meaning was clear enough. Fight or die. Kyung-ho looked around the room and saw other prisoners watching from cages set into the walls. He spotted Hannah in one of them. She was pressed against the bars, her face tight. With worry, when their eyes met, she mouthed words at him that he could not hear but understood. "Remember what I told you?" The Krillian warrior stepped forward. Its 4 arms ended in claws that were each as long as Kyung-ho's fingers. Its compound eyes tracked his every movement. It was clearly confident this would be a quick fight. Kyung-ho tried to remember everything Hannah had said about these creatures. They were strong and had natural armor, but they relied on their compound vision. They attacked directly without much strategy. Most importantly, it had joints that could be damaged if hit in the right place. The creature lunged forward faster than Kyung-ho expected. He barely rolled to the side as those deadly claws swept through the air where his head had been. A crowd of watching prisoners made various sounds of excitement or fear. The Krillian turned and attacked again. This time Kyung-ho was ready. Instead of trying to run away, he moved to the side and grabbed a handful of the sandy floor. As the creature's claws reached for him, he threw the sand directly at its compound eyes. The effect was immediate. Creature made a high-pitched shriek and stumbled backward, its upper arms clawing at its eyes. Kyung-ho realized that Hannah had been right. The compound eyes that gave it such good vision also made it vulnerable to things like sand and bright light. But the creature was not finished. It swung its lower arms wildly, trying to hit Kyung-ho, even though it could not see him clearly. One of those swings caught him in the shoulder and sent him flying across the room. He hit the wall hard and felt something crack in his ribs. Pain shot through his body as he got back to his feet. The Krillian was already clearing its eyes and would be able to see again soon. Kung Ho looked around desperately for something to use as a weapon. There, half buried in the sand, was a piece of metal that looked like it had broken off from some previous fight. It was about as long as his forearm and had a sharp edge on one end. It's not much of a weapon against a creature like this, but it was better than nothing. The Krillian charged at him again, its vision now clear. Kung Ho waited until the last possible moment, then dropped to the ground and rolled between the creature's legs. As he passed underneath, he drove the metal piece upward into the joint. Where the creature's leg met its body, the shriek that followed was even louder than before. The Krillian stumbled and nearly fell as green blood began to flow from the wound. Its leg could no longer support its full weight properly. Now Kung Ho understood what Hannah had meant about human advantages. He was not stronger or faster than this creature, but he could think and adapt, could use tools and find weaknesses. He could do things the creature would never expect. The injured Krillian was now angry and desperate. It attacked with all four arms at once, trying to overwhelm Kung Ho with pure aggression, but anger made it sloppy. Its attacks were wild and uncontrolled. Kung Ho danced around the creature, staying just out of reach of its claws. He kept moving, forcing it to turn and put weight on its injured leg. Each time it did, the creature became slower and more unsteady. Then he saw his chance. The creature overextended itself with a particularly wild swing. Kung Ho darted in and drove his makeshift weapon into the joint of one of its middle arms. The arm went limp immediately. The crowd was getting louder now. Even the Valian guards seemed surprised by what they were seeing. A human was not just surviving against a Krillian warrior, he was winning. The creature was now badly injured and desperate. It tried one last attack, launching itself at Kung Ho with its remaining good arms extended, but Kung Ho was ready. He stepped to the side and used the creature's own momentum against it. As it flew past him, he drove his weapon into the joint of its neck. The Krillian warrior crashed into the wall and did not get up again. The room fell silent. Except for the sound of Kung Ho's heavy breathing, he stood over the fallen creature, blood running from cuts on his arms and face. His ribs hurt with every breath. But he was alive. From the prisoner cages came sounds of amazement. Some of the aliens were making noises that might have been cheering. Others seemed shocked that a human could defeat such a powerful opponent. Kung Ho looked up at Hannah's cage. She was smiling and nodding at him. Her plan had worked. He had used his intelligence and adaptability to overcome a much stronger opponent. The Valian guards were talking among themselves in their clicking language. They seemed surprised by what they had witnessed. One of them approached Kung Ho and gestured toward a different exit than the one he had entered through. As they led him away, Kung Ho heard one of the guards speak to another in broken Galactic. "Common, the human fought like beast. Arena masters will want to see this." Kung Ho was taken to a different holding area. This one was cleaner, and the cages were larger. The other prisoners here looked different too. They were bigger and more dangerous looking than the ones in the first area. These were the real gladiators. A massive creature with rock-like skin looked at him as he was put into a cage. "Human," it said in a voice like grinding stone. "You killed Krillian warrior. This is not common thing." "I had good advice," Kung Ho replied. "Advice is useful, but you must fight alone in arena. No advice there." Another prisoner, this one covered in what looked like metal scales, turned toward him. "They will test you more now. Victory brings attention. Attention brings stronger enemies." Kung Ho understood. By winning his first fight, he had proven he was not just prey. But that meant the Valians would put him against more dangerous opponents. Each victory would only make his next fight harder, but he had learned something important today. Hannah had been right about human advantages. He was not the strongest or fastest, but he could think and adapt, could use tools and find weaknesses that others missed. Most importantly, he was not alone. Somewhere in this complex, Hannah was watching and planning. Together, they might actually have a chance to survive this nightmare and find their way home. The next test would come soon. But for now, Kyung-ho allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He had faced a creature that should have killed him easily, and he had won. Maybe humans were not as helpless as everyone thought. Maybe it was time for the galaxy to learn what humans were really capable of. When their backs were against the wall, 3 days passed in the gladiator holding area. Kyung-ho fought 2 more battles and won both. The first was against a creature that looked like a giant snake with arms. The second was against a pack of 3 smaller aliens that attacked together. Like wolves, each fight taught him something new about surviving in the arena. The snake creature was fast, but could not change direction quickly once it started moving. The wolf-like pack was dangerous together, but became confused when separated. Kyung-ho learned to use the arena itself as a weapon, making his enemies crash into walls or fall into the sandpits, but each victory came with a cost. His body was covered in cuts and bruises. His ribs still hurt from the first fight. He was getting stronger and more skilled, but he was also getting worn down. The other gladiators watched him with growing respect. The rock-skinned creature, who called himself Gorak, even began giving him advice about fighting techniques. But they all knew the truth. No matter how many small fights he won, eventually the arena masters would put him against something he could not defeat. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Kyung-ho was awakened by the sound of heavy footsteps. But these were not the usual guards. These footsteps were slower and heavier, like someone important was coming. Through the bars of his cage, he saw a figure approaching that made his blood run cold. It was a Valian, but not like the guards. This one was much larger and wore elaborate clothing covered in jewels and metal decorations. Its scales were a deeper green and seemed to shimmer with their own light. Behind the important Valian came a group of guards and what looked like servants. One of the servants was pushing a floating platform that held various objects Kyung-ho could not identify. The important Valian stopped in front of Kyung-ho's cage and studied him with cold yellow eyes. When it spoke, its voice was deeper than the guards, with a hissing quality that made Kyung's skin crawl. "So this is the human who has been causing such interesting betting patterns," it said in perfect galactic common. "I am Varric's owner of this arena complex. You have cost me a considerable amount of money." Kyung-ho stood up slowly, trying to show no fear. "I am sorry to hear that." Varric's made a sound that might have been laughter. "Do not be sorry. I admire creatures who can surprise me. It happens so rarely these days." The alien moved closer to the bars. "Tell me, human, what is your name?" "Kyung-ho." "Kyung-ho. A simple name for a creature who has done very complicated things to my profit margins. Do you know how much money I lost when you killed the Krillian warrior? I imagine it was quite a lot." "Indeed. But do you know how much money I made when you fought the Serpentine and the Howler pack?" Kyung-ho remained silent. 10 times more than I lost," Varrix continued. "Because by then, I had learned not to bet against you. You see, I am a businessman above all else. I adapt to changing circumstances." One of the servants moved forward and whispered something in Varrix's ear. The alien nodded and turned back to Kyung-ho. "I have a proposition for you, human. In 7 days, we will hold our most prestigious event, the Grand Melee. It is a battle between the 12 greatest gladiators from across this sector of the galaxy. The winner receives something very valuable indeed." "What is that?" "Freedom. Complete freedom for the winner and one other being of their choice." Kyung-ho felt his heart begin to beat faster. "And if I lose, then you die in the most entertaining way possible. But let me be clear about what you would be facing. The Grand Melee is not like your previous fights. These are not simple predators or pack hunters. These are beings who have survived hundreds of battles each. No human has ever lasted more than 5 minutes in a Grand Melee. Then why are you offering this to me?" Varrix's eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Because you interest me. And because the betting odds against you will be so extreme that even a small wager in your favor could make me incredibly wealthy." "What about the other gladiators? Will they not object to fighting a human?" "They will welcome it. most of them, have never fought a human before. They consider it an amusing novelty before the real battles begin. Kung Ho thought about this offer. 7 days to prepare for a fight against the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Choose one other being to go free with him. Could choose Hannah. Of course. But do not take too long. The grand melee will happen whether you participate or not. This is simply an opportunity for you to die with the possibility of meaning rather than the certainty of meaninglessness. Varix turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, Inhuman. Your scientist friend has been quite active lately. She has been asking many questions about arena procedures and technical specifications. Very thorough questions. Kung Ho felt a chill run down his spine. What? Do you mean? I mean that she has been studying us just as carefully as she studied you. Interesting behavior for someone who should be focused on her own survival. After Varix left, Kung Ho sat in his cage and tried to process what had just happened. The grand melee was clearly a death sentence, but it was also the only real chance he had ever been offered to escape this place. More importantly, Varix had mentioned Hannah. She was doing something, planning something. He needed to find a way to communicate with her before making his decision. That opportunity came sooner than expected. Later that day, the guards brought a new prisoner to the gladiator area. It was a small, quick-moving alien that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard. As they put it into a cage near Kung Ho, it whispered something in Galactic common. Message from the female human. She says to tell you that she has been studying the arena systems, which believes there are ways to turn the environment to your advantage. She says to accept the offer. Kung Ho stared at the creature. How did she contact you? She helped me when I was injured in the lower levels. Treated my wounds with medical knowledge. I owe her a debt. What else did she say? Said that if you fight in the grand melee, she will find a way to help you. She said that humans are smarter than the aliens think, and that intelligence is the greatest weapon of all. And if I lose? The creature's eyes became sad. She said that if you lose, she will make sure your death means something. She will make sure the galaxy knows what humans are truly capable of. That night, Kung Ho made his decision. When the guards came the next morning, he told them to give Varix his answer, who would fight in the grand melee. The news spread quickly through the arena complex. The other gladiators looked at him with a mixture of respect and pity. They knew he was brave, but they also knew he was probably going to die. But Kung Ho had something they did not understand. He had Hannah. Somewhere in this complex, she was working on a plan. She was using her intelligence and scientific knowledge to find advantages that no one else would think of. The grand melee was still 6 days away. That gave them time to prepare. Time for Hannah to study the arena systems and find weaknesses. Time for Kung Ho to get ready for the fight of his life. As he settled down to sleep that night, Kung Ho thought about what Varix had said. No human had ever lasted more than 5 minutes in a grand melee. But no human had ever had someone like Hannah working behind the scenes either. Maybe it was time to change the odds. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy that humans were full of surprises. Grand melee was coming, and Kung Ho intended to be ready for it. The 6 days before the grand melee passed, like a blur of preparation and growing tension. Kung Ho trained harder than ever before. He studied every opponent he might face, learning their fighting styles and looking for weaknesses. But most importantly, he waited for word from Hannah. On the second day, that word came through the bird-like creature who had become their messenger. Its name was Keto, and it moved freely through the arena complex because it was too small to be considered a real threat. The female human has gained access to the technical areas, Keto whispered during feeding time. She convinced the Valians that she wants to study the gladiators for betting purposes. They think she is trying to make money on the fights. What has she learned? She says the arena has many hidden systems. Environmental controls, weapon caches, emergency passages. She is making maps of everything. This was encouraging news, but Kung Ho still had to focus on his own preparation. The other gladiators helped him as much as they could. Gorak taught him how to use the arena's sand to his advantage. The metal-scaled creature, called Torvin, showed him techniques for fighting multiple opponents at once. But the most valuable Help came from an unexpected source. In the cage next to his was a gladiator he had not seen before. It was about his size, but covered in what looked like living shadow. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. It said during the quiet hours of the night, "I have fought in 3 grand melees and survived them all." Kyung-ho was amazed. 3 grand melees? How is that possible? I am good at staying alive. But more than that, I understand something that most gladiators do not. The grand melee is not just about fighting, it is about survival. The crowd wants a show, so they make the arena full of dangers beyond just the other fighters. What kind of dangers? The arena changes during the fight. Walls move, floors collapse, new weapons appear. The environment itself becomes an enemy. Most gladiators focus only on their opponents and ignore everything else. That is why they die. Shade moved closer to the bars between their cages. But you are different. You use the environment as a weapon. I have watched your fights. You think like a survivor, not just a warrior. Will you be in the grand melee? Yes, and when the time comes, I will try to kill you just like all the others. But until then, I will help you prepare. It makes the fight more interesting. Over the next few days, Shade taught Kyung-ho everything about surviving in a changing arena. How to read the signs that the environment was about to shift. How to use collapsing walls as weapons. How to find hidden weapon caches. Most importantly, how to make the other gladiators fight each other instead of focusing on him. Remember, Shade said on the night before the grand melee, the crowd wants drama. They want to see impossible victories and heroic deaths. What can give them a good show? They will love you. And if the crowd loves you, sometimes that can save your life. On the 3rd day, Kido brought more news from Hannah. She has found something important in the arena's database. The grand melee is not just entertainment. This is also a recruitment tool. What do you mean? The winners do not really go free, are forced to join the Valian military. They become soldiers in their expansion wars. Even victory leads to slavery. This news hit Kyung-ho like a physical blow. Even if he won the grand melee, he would not truly be free. He would just be trading one form of captivity for another. She said that true freedom requires more than just winning the fight. It requires escaping from this place entirely. She is working on a plan for that too. The next day brought Kyung-ho's final test before the grand melee. Varix had arranged for him to fight against Korvac the Destroyer, a massive creature that had never lost a battle. Korvac was 9 feet tall, with cybernetic implants that enhanced his already incredible strength. His body was covered in metal plates, and his arms had been replaced with mechanical weapons. The fight took place in a smaller arena with hundreds of spectators. Kyung-ho knew this was more than just a test. This was Varix showing off his human gladiator before the main event. The betting on this fight would be enormous. When the fight began, Korvac attacked with devastating force. His mechanical arms fired energy blasts that turned the sand to glass where they hit. His speed was incredible despite his size. This was not like fighting a natural creature. This was like fighting a living war machine. Kyung-ho barely survived. The first few minutes, he used every trick Shade had taught him, every technique he had learned from his previous fights. But Korvac seemed to have an answer for everything. Then Kyung-ho remembered something Hannah had said about thinking differently. Korvac was part machine, which meant he had mechanical weaknesses. The cybernetic implants that made him so powerful also gave him vulnerabilities that a purely biological creature would not have. Kyung-ho began targeting the joints where the mechanical parts connected to Korvac's organic body, used the glass created by the energy blasts as weapons, throwing handfuls of sharp fragments at the creature's sensors and joints. Slowly, Korvac began to malfunction. His energy blasts became less accurate. His movements became jerky and unpredictable. The crowd was going wild as they watched the impossible sight of a human defeating the legendary destroyer. The final blow came when Kyung-ho managed to get behind Korvac and drive a shard of glass into the main power coupling for his mechanical arms. The arms went dead, and without them, Korvac was just a large, slow creature with no natural weapons. The crowd erupted in cheers as Korvac fell. Kung Ho stood over the defeated champion, exhausted but victorious. He had proven that he belonged. In the grand melee, more importantly, he had shown the galaxy that humans were capable of defeating any opponent through intelligence and determination. That night, Kato brought him a final message from Hannah. She says that tomorrow, during the grand melee, she will trigger a system failure that will create chaos in the arena complex. She says that if you can survive the first part of the fight, she will give you opportunities to escape entirely. About her. She says not to worry about her. She says that humans protect each other and that she will make sure you get home safely. As Kuncho tried to sleep before the biggest fight of his life, he thought about everything that had brought him to this moment. He had been captured, enslaved, and forced to fight for his life. But he had also discovered something about himself and his species that he had never known before. Humans were not the strongest or fastest creatures in the galaxy, but they were the smartest. They were the most adaptable. And most importantly, they never gave up on each other. Tomorrow he would face 12 of the most dangerous gladiators in known space. The odds were impossible, but he would not be facing them alone. Somewhere in the complex, Hannah was preparing to risk everything to help him escape. The grand melee was coming, and Kyung-ko was ready to show the galaxy what humans could really do when they fought not just for survival but for freedom. The morning of the grand melee arrived with the sound of thousands of alien voices echoing through the complex. Spectators from across the galaxy had come to watch the greatest gladiatorial event in this sector of space. The betting pools were enormous, with most of the money wagered against the human who had somehow earned his place among the elite fighters. Kung-ho was taken to a preparation chamber where he was given basic armor and allowed to choose from a selection of weapons. The armor was light and flexible, designed more for appearance than protection. He chose a simple sword and a small shield, weapons that felt natural in his hands. In the chamber next to his, he could hear the other gladiators preparing for battle. There was Grimshow, the Devourer, a massive creature with acid for blood. Thorax, the Impaler, whose entire body was covered in deadly spikes. And most dangerous of all, Nexus Prime, an energy being that could change its form at will. Through a small window, Kyung-ho could see the arena itself. It was enormous, easily 10 times larger than any fighting space he had been in before. The floor was covered with various obstacles, walls that could move, pits that could open and close, and platforms that could rise or fall. Weapon caches were scattered throughout, but they were sealed and would only open during the fight. The crowd was unlike anything he had ever seen. Thousands of different alien species filled the viewing areas, all of them eager to watch beings fight to the death. The noise was overwhelming, a mixture of roars, clicks, hisses, and sounds that had no human equivalent. In the center of the highest viewing platform sat Varix, surrounded by other wealthy Valians and important figures from across the galaxy. Even from this distance, Kyung-ho could see the alien's cold yellow eyes watching him with interest. A guard approached his preparation chamber. "It is time," the guard said. In broken Galactic common, Kyung-ho was led through a corridor that opened directly onto the arena floor. As he stepped into the light, the crowd's noise became deafening. Some of the spectators were cheering, but most were making sounds of amusement or contempt. To them, it was just entertainment, a novelty that would be killed quickly, so the real fighting could begin. One by one, the other 11 gladiators entered the arena from different corridors. Each one was more terrifying than the last. Kyung-ho had studied them all, but seeing them in person was different. These were not just skilled fighters. These were living weapons, each one designed to kill in the most efficient way possible. The last to enter was Nexus Prime. It appeared as a shifting column of blue energy, its constantly changing shape and size. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "So this is the human who has caused such excitement," Nexus Prime said. "I must admit I am curious to see what makes your species so special." "You will find out soon enough," Kyung-ho replied, trying to keep his voice steady. A horn sounded from somewhere above, and suddenly the arena floor began to change. Walls rose from the ground, creating a maze-like environment. Pits opened in the floor, revealing spikes and other deadly traps. The weapon caches opened with a hiss, revealing advanced armaments that glowed with their own light. The grand melee had begun. Immediately, chaos erupted. The larger gladiators charged toward the weapon caches, trying to claim the most powerful armaments. Others began fighting each other right away, eager to reduce the number of opponents quickly. Kung Ho did exactly what Shade had taught him. Instead of joining the initial rush, he moved to the edges of the arena and began studying the environment. He watched how the walls moved, where the pits appeared, how the other gladiators fought. His strategy was to let the others eliminate each other while he learned everything he could about the arena's systems. It was a dangerous approach because it made him look weak, but it was also the smartest way to survive the opening minutes when the fighting was most chaotic. The first gladiator to die was a crystalline creature that shattered when Grimjaw's acid blood splashed on it. The second was a heavily armored warrior who fell into a pit that suddenly opened beneath his feet. Within 5 minutes, 3 gladiators were dead, and the crowd was screaming with excitement. That was when Kung Ho noticed something strange. In the viewing areas, lights were flickering. Some of the control panels that managed the arena's systems were showing error messages. Hannah was beginning her plan. Nexus Prime had claimed the most powerful weapon from the caches. It's an energy cannon that could destroy almost anything. It was now hunting the remaining gladiators systematically. Its energy form making it nearly impossible to hurt Kyuncho. Watched as Nexus Prime eliminated 2 more opponents with terrifying efficiency. The energy being was clearly the most dangerous threat in the arena. But being made of energy also meant it relied entirely on the arena's power systems, as if reading his thoughts. The arena's lights suddenly flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, but it was much dimmer than before. In the confusion, Kyung Ho heard Nexus Prime make a sound of surprise. The energy being's form became unstable, flickering like a bad hologram. This was Hannah's doing. She was disrupting the power systems that kept Nexus Prime stable. But the effect would not last long. The arena's backup systems would restore full power soon. Kung Ho moved quickly. While the other gladiators were confused by the sudden darkness, he made his way toward Nexus Prime. The energy being was struggling to maintain its form. It was still dangerous. Using techniques he had learned from fighting Korvac, Kung Ho began targeting the arena's power conduits near Nexus Prime's position. Each time he damaged a conduit, the energy being became more unstable. Clever human, Nexus Prime said, its voice now distorted and weak. But you cannot run forever. I am not running, Kung Ho replied. I am hunting. The final strike came when Kung Ho managed to sever the main power line feeding the area where Nexus Prime was fighting. The energy being's form collapsed entirely, leaving only a small core of light that quickly faded to nothing. The crowd fell silent for a moment, stunned by what they had just witnessed. A human had defeated the legendary Nexus Prime, something that should have been impossible. But there were still 5 other gladiators left, and they were all now focused on him. Worse, the arena's power systems were coming back online. Hannah's sabotage had given him an advantage, but it would not last much longer. Grimjaw the Devourer was the first to attack. The massive creature's acid blood made it incredibly dangerous in close combat, but Kung Ho had learned to use the arena's own systems against his opponents. He led Grimjaw toward one of the movable walls, then triggered the mechanism that made it slide closed. The wall crushed Grimjaw before the creature could react, its acid blood eating through the metal, but not quickly enough to save it, for gladiators remained. Thorax, the Impaler, had teamed up with a creature that looked like a living shadow. Together, they were systematically hunting the remaining fighters. But Kung Ho was no longer the same person who had been captured weeks ago. He had learned to think like a predator, to use every advantage he could find. The arena was not just a battlefield to him now. It was a weapon he could control. The final phase of the grand melee was about to begin, and Kung Ho intended to be the last one standing. Not just for his own survival, but for Hannah, who was risking everything to help him escape. The crowd was chanting now. It's caught up in the excitement of seeing a human not just survive, but dominate in the galaxy's deadliest arena. They had come to watch him die, but instead, they were witnessing the birth of a legend. The grand melee was far from over. But Kyung-ho had already accomplished something no human had ever done before. He had shown the galaxy that humans were not prey. They were predators, and they were very, very dangerous. The final four gladiators circled each other in the arena like predators waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Besides Kyung-ho, there was Thorax, the impaler with his deadly spikes, the shadow creature called Voidwalker, and surprisingly, Shade, who had survived by staying hidden until now. The crowd was in a frenzy. No one had expected a human to make it this far, let alone eliminate some of the most feared gladiators in the galaxy. The betting pools were in chaos as spectators tried to figure out how to wager on something that should have been impossible. Above in his viewing box, Varix watched with cold calculation. The human had exceeded every expectation, but that only made him more valuable. Win or lose, Kyung-ho would never be allowed to leave this place alive. The secret of human combat abilities was too dangerous to let spread throughout the galaxy. But Varix did not know that Hannah had been listening to his private conversations through the arena's communication systems. She had heard his plans to capture Kyung-ho regardless of the fight's outcome. That knowledge had changed everything about her own mission. Down in the arena, Kyung-ho was facing his greatest challenge yet. 3 opponents, each one deadly in their own way. But he had learned something important during his time in captivity. The greatest human weapon was not strength or speed. It was the ability to turn enemies into allies. Shade, he called out, as the 4 gladiators maintained their careful distance. You taught me how to survive in here. You do not have to die for their entertainment. The shadow creature moved closer, its form shifting constantly. You proposing human? I am proposing that we stop fighting each other and start fighting them. Kyung-ho gestured toward the viewing areas filled with spectators. We are all prisoners here. Why should we kill each other for their amusement? Thorax the Impaler made a sound that might have been laughter. You think you can convince us to rebel? They will kill us all. They are going to kill us anyway. Kyung-ho replied. I heard what Varix said. The winners do not go free. They become soldiers in the Valiant army. We trade one prison for another. Voidwalker, the shadow creature, seemed to consider this. Even if that is true, how do we fight our way out of here? There are thousands of guards. We do not fight our way out, Kyung-ho said. We make them fight each other before anyone could. Ask what he meant. The arena's lights began to flicker again. This time, the effect was much more dramatic. Entire sections of the complex went dark. Emergency alarms began sounding throughout the facility. In the viewing areas, panic began to spread as the spectators realized something was seriously wrong. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows that made everything look threatening. Some of the alien spectators began pushing toward the exits. This was Hannah's signal. She had done more than just sabotage the power systems. She had also accessed the arena's containment systems. Throughout the complex, cage doors were opening. Prisoner holding areas were unlocking. The gladiators, who had been defeated in earlier fights but not killed, were being released. The arena that had been a place of entertainment was suddenly becoming a war zone. Kyung-ho turned to the other 3 gladiators. Now do you understand? We can either die fighting each other, or we can live by fighting together. Shade was the first to nod. I have been in this place for 3 years. I am tired of killing for their pleasure. Thorax and Voidwalker exchanged glances, then both nodded. As well, in that moment, the grand melee became something it had never been before. Not a fight to the death, but the beginning of a revolution. The 4 gladiators moved together toward the arena's main entrance. Around them, the complex was descending into chaos. Freed prisoners were fighting with guards.
Somebody alien.
Spectators were trying to escape while others were trying to help restore order. But the biggest surprise came when they reached the entrance. There, fighting her way through a group of Valiant guards, was Hannah. She was no longer the scared scientist Kyung-ho had first met in the holding cells. She moved with confidence and purpose, using improvised weapons and her knowledge of alien biology to defeat opponents much larger than herself. Hannah, Kyung-ho called out. She turned and smiled when she saw him. I told you I would find a way to help you escape. How did you get here? I convinced some of the other human prisoners to help me. We have been planning this for days. Power failure was just the beginning. Together, the group fought their way through the complex. Hannah led them through maintenance corridors and service tunnels that she had mapped during her reconnaissance. They moved quickly. Knowing that the Valians would soon organize a proper response to the uprising, behind them, the arena complex was in complete chaos. The freed prisoners had turned the gladiatorial complex into a battlefield. Guards were fighting desperate battles on multiple fronts. The entertainment that was supposed to showcase Valian power had become a demonstration of their weakness. They reached the docking bay, where the transport ships were kept. But Varix was waiting. For them, with a squad of elite guards, the alien crime lord looked furious as he saw his most valuable assets trying to escape. Did you really think you could steal my property? Varix hissed. You belong to me now, all of you. We belong to no one, Kyung-ho replied. He looked around at his companions. Shade, Thorax, Voidwalker, and Hannah. Each one was ready to fight. For their freedom, the battle that followed was unlike anything in the arena. This was not entertainment. This was survival. The gladiators fought not as individuals, but as a team, each one covering the other's weaknesses. Hannah coordinated their attacks, using her knowledge of alien physiology to direct them toward their enemies' most vulnerable points. Varix himself was a formidable opponent. His enhanced body and advanced weapons made him incredibly dangerous. But he was used to fighting individuals, not a coordinated team. The combined assault of 4 experienced gladiators was more than he could handle. When Varix fell, his remaining guards surrendered. The way to the transport ships was clear. As they prepared to leave, Hannah made one final adjustment to the arena's systems. She activated the emergency broadcast system and sent a message throughout the galaxy. The message contained recordings of everything that had happened in the arena, including proof of the Valian slave trade and the illegal gladiatorial fights. Let the galaxy know what really happens here, she said, as she finished the transmission. The transport ship lifted off. From the docking bay, just as Valian reinforcements arrived, below them, the arena complex was still in chaos. The uprising had spread beyond the gladiatorial areas to the entire facility as they flew away from Gorvac Prime. Kyung-ho looked back at the complex that had been his prison. Fires were burning. In several sections, escape pods were launching as personnel evacuated. The arena that had been a symbol of Valian power was now a symbol of their defeat. Where do we go now? Shade asked. Home, Kyung-ho said. We go home. But he knew that this was just the beginning. The message Hannah had sent would reach every corner of the galaxy. Other species would learn about human capabilities. Some would want to be allies. Others would see humans as a threat to be eliminated. Galaxy was about to discover that humanity was not just another weak species to be conquered or enslaved. They were something much more dangerous. They were survivors who refused to give up, who turned their enemy's strength against them, and who would fight to the death to protect each other. The gladiatorial arena has been meant to showcase the weakness of captured species. Instead, it had become the birthplace of a legend. The legend of humans who fought like beasts to save each other, and who would never again be underestimated by anyone in the galaxy, as their ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward Earth. In freedom, Kyung-ho knew that everything had changed. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They had proven that they belonged among the stars, not as victims, but as equals. The arena was behind them. But the real fight for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning.